Hello, I am Ann Merchant with the National Academy of Sciences, and we want to welcome you to another episode of Wrong Answers Only. Now, of course, while you only see her for a few minutes at the top of the show, I do want to say that she's been toiling for weeks behind the scenes to make all of this happen, right?
That's me. I'm Kate Sutter, the toiler, and I'm with LabX, a program of the National Academy of Sciences.
Yes, and for the record, I do absolutely no toiling whatsoever. I cannot be trusted to do any of the details of toiling, but I can be trusted with the details of telling you a little bit about what the National Academy of Sciences is, and for the purposes of this event, what the Transportation Research Board is, because we're talking about traffic. So TRB is very relevant. So you could be forgiven for thinking that the National Academy of Sciences is part of the federal government because national in our name, our Washington, D.C., Constitution Avenue address, but that would be the first wrong answer of this evening. We are in fact not part of the federal government. We were created in 1863 by Abraham Lincoln, who was a guy who had a lot of right answers, to provide good advice to the federal government on science policy. And of course, about 100 years ago, that's when the Transportation Research Board was created to essentially do research on transportation. So things like road construction, accident research, traffic, which is of course what we're going to talk about tonight, all the things that vex us about sitting in our cars for too long.
Which is really why I'm excited about tonight's episode, Anne. I mean, it's about time we had some fun with traffic. So between our expert who studies like this stuff for a living and our three comedians who've experienced firsthand some of the world's best or worst traffic in LA and New York, I think we're going to cover some real transportation highlights here. In fact, I hope the bigwigs at TRB, Transportation Research Board, are taking notes because I think Wrong Answers Only is the right place to be, and at least for the people in the field. But of course, you guys, I want to tell you about what's going on at LabX elsewhere. We are not a one-trick pony. I know, it's incredible. And I'm really excited to tell you all about it so you can tune in. Starting next week, check out our Instagram feed. We are starting post called Oddly Specific, which is going to feature some little known kind of crazy, but entirely credible science that we've collected. We've also released a new episode of Chemists in the Kitchen on our YouTube channel. This one's about s'mores, my favorite. And the chemists are carefully evaluating different methods to melting the marshmallows. And for the record, I'm one all about the broiler now, so you're going to want to tune in there. Last, we've also partnered with Upworthy, the big media giant, on a new series called In My Element. And there's 3 new episodes. You can watch them up on our website. It's pretty Upworthy. So there's no wrong answers in any of those. I want to be clear. We've reserved that all for tonight. So I think it's time to kick things off in probably the most wrong way by welcoming the most right man of our host, Chris Duffy. Here you go. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What an introduction. Thank you so much to Kate and to Ann and to everyone at LabX and the National Academy for making the show possible. Thank you all for being here. I'm your host, Chris Duffy, and this is Wrong Answers Only. So on tonight's show, you and our panel of comedians are going to learn all about exciting research from our traffic expert, our scientific expert, and also you're going to learn about what he is like outside of the lab. If you need live captioning, you can head over to the YouTube stream where it will be provided for you. So right below in the link, it's going to be posted below my video feed. So if you need live captioning, that's where you can get it. I also want to point out, this is an interactive show. So the beauty of doing this online is that we can get all of you involved. We want to hear your jokes. We want to hear your questions. We want you to play these games right along with us. If you look in your browser to the right of where you are watching, you should have the ability to type comments where it says Q&A. And if you click over next to Q&A, you'll see polls, which we're going to use throughout the show. And in fact, we are going to throw up a test poll right now. So click over to that and let us see your answers. So you should be seeing a poll that says, Chris grew a beard this year. What do you think? I'm looking for feedback. I'm going to use this test as a chance to get some feedback. Your options are A, great beard. B, you're telling me that's not a fake beard. A lot of people telling me on Zoom that it looks like a fake beard. C, you better shave that thing off. And D, I don't understand how to use polls. Now, if you answer D, I don't understand how to use polls, you are a scamp. You're a scamp because you're using a poll right now. Okay, hopefully that's working for you. If it's not, don't worry. It'll work either way. It's a great show. After tonight's show, you're going to get a post-show email with links to go deeper into our scientist's work, to learn more about his research, and to find out more from each of our panelists. So you'll get videos, you'll get jokes, you'll get lots of fun stuff from them. There is also, and this is very important, there's also going to be a trivia question in that email. And if you get that trivia question right, you will join the immortals on the wrong answers only scroll of glory. Here are the folks who nailed that question from our last episode. Here is last episode's scroll of glory. We had Aaron, we had Adam, we had Alyssa, we had Anna, Kathy, Courtney, Douglas, Gwendolyn, Israel, Ivan, Jason, Jessica, Joshua, Kelly, Malathi, Martin, Mary, Nellie, Nilo, Opal, Paula, Peter, Philip, Rebecca, Ronald, Rosalie, Sarah, Sean, Sheila, Stephen, Timothy, and Tina. A lot of winners, a lot of people on that scroll of glory last episode. That's incredible. You could join that illustrious list. All you have to do is respond to that trivia question correctly. Okay, last month we did a Halloween episode and we interviewed neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett. And in addition to the trivia question about neuroscience, we asked our audience members to tell us the scariest moment that they had experienced. And there are a few that are too good to keep to ourselves, so I just want to share a few with us. One person said, trapped alone with a red-tailed hawk who hated me and had latched on to my gloved hand with her talons and refused to let go. So there was some sort of falconry gone wrong. Did not expect that to be someone's scariest moment. Another person said, a very scary moment in my life was a dark summer night when we, as teens, hunkered together in the basement with our mother to watch the late night horror movie. It was about a human bat who murdered people living out in the country. And then we came upstairs and we realized that we had yet to feed the dog who lived in a kennel at the bottom of the hill past the apple trees. That person wrote like a full short story. A terrifying little short story, but a wonderful one. And then another person, so that person wrote a whole short story that was basically nothing. I had to go outside. Another person just wrote 2 words, plane crash. That's definitely we needed more explanation. And then another one that required more explanation is someone also said, after a few dates with the woman who is now my current wife, I found out that I used to date her half sister. And that is terrifying, truly terrifying. Okay, I am seeing that someone in the chat is already asking, did I grow this beard to look more like Abraham Lincoln? And yes, actually, much like the National Academy of Sciences, I was also created by Abe Lincoln. So let's get into tonight's show. We have an incredible panel of comedians who are going to be playing. We have Josh Sharp, Karen Chi, and Lisa Curry. All right. Hello. Hey, hi, everyone. Hey. Woo. Look at that. Oh, we got some extreme close-up going on. Whoa, I'm across the board. We're going to find out who tonight's expert is in a video where I'm going to let him introduce himself. So we're going to play this video right now.
My name is Brian Wolshon, and I'm a professor of civil engineering at Louisiana State University. I teach classes and do research in highway and traffic engineering.
So in my field, what I'm really known for is taking what we know about traffic and simulating traffic and modeling traffic and applying that to major disaster evacuation. So specifically, I was involved in the planning and management of the evacuation for New Orleans. So that plan, even though it at the time caught a lot of bad press, is probably one of the most effective anywhere in the world. And because of that, those techniques have been adopted across the world. And now it's fundamentally changed how we do mass evacuations of people. And it has really turned into a science.
So Brian, thank you so much for being here on the show and letting us talk to you about your research.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you all. I'm thrilled to be here.
So we're gonna get right into it. So panelists, you're gonna get a chance to talk a lot to Brian over the course of the show, but this is your first opportunity to hear about what he does. We call this segment You Do What? So in You Do What, we are going to let each of you ask your first question. So what is it that you have always wanted to know from a traffic engineer? Josh, why don't you get us started?
Brian, I actually want to know about you. And I would say there's lots of cool things about cars, like how fast and loud they are, and traffic is probably everyone's least favorite. So what got you in that part of the umbrella of the world that is cars?
Boy, that's a great question. I think what it had nothing to do with cars. It was just good people. I had some great mentors along the way. I had some great professors. And I found that the more I learned from them, the more I wanted to learn. And what's crazy is if you would have asked me 10 years ago, gosh, way longer ago than that, if traffic could be engineered, or if it was actually a real thing, I would have laughed. I didn't even know it was a real thing, but it is a real thing, obviously, and it affects our lives every single day across the country, across the world. So that's, I think, what got me interested and involved is really good people, really smart, good people.
Okay, Karen, what about you? What's the first question you'd like to ask Brian?
Okay, I have a question, which is, because you are a traffic engineer, whenever you're like driving your family or friends around, do you ever feel a lot of pressure to be really good at driving?
Just the opposite. I feel like I have license to do anything I want. No, actually not quite. But what I do find myself doing when I drive around, and I probably drive my poor kids crazy, and all my friends crazy, is that I'm constantly looking at things and assessing them. You know, is that good? Is that bad? Is there a way to improve that? Is there a way to make that better? Why are things going wrong? Why are things going right? So what's funny is, no, I don't feel any pressure to do well. I literally feel like, wow, I understand this better than all of you. So I'm probably better, but I'm really not. I'm probably
you certainly sound like you are not feeling pressure to perform well. You sound like a terrifying driver.
I think I am.
Yeah. Lisa, your turn.
Here's my question, Brian. I live in Los Angeles, where seemingly no one has anywhere to be. And I'm wondering, how is it that in a city of several million, I'm the only person who knows how to drive correctly? I mean, just statistically, how is that happening?
Oh, my goodness. I think the best explanation for that, Lisa, by far, and since you guys are comedians, you have probably seen this, so you're familiar, obviously, with Jerry Seinfeld. And I think Jerry Seinfeld put it the best, without a doubt, on drivers. So Jerry Seinfeld said there's only one perfect driver in the world, and that's me. Everybody else is either an idiot or a maniac. And he said, and he defined that as anybody who drives slower than me is a complete idiot. Anybody who drives faster than me is a total maniac.
We are.
That's how people look at things. They, even traffic jams themselves. They say, wow, this traffic is terrible, and I hate traffic, and I hate sitting in traffic, as if everybody's in your way. But in reality, we're all in everybody else's way. But Lisa, that being said, you're probably the best driver.
I do take it really personally. So yeah.
Also, we are certainly going to hear from Seinfeld's lawyer after the show. This will be the final episode of Wrong Answers Only. We are going to be licensing that joke for the whole budget of 2022. I'm just kidding, Brian. I'm sure that's not a thing that happens. But if it is, we will experience it. Someone in the audience is asking, I think, a really relevant question, which is, what kind of car does Brian drive?
Oh, gosh. Again, I'm from Detroit, so it's got to be American. I live in Louisiana, so it's got to be a pickup truck. So I literally have a big old 4-wheel drive GMC pickup truck. That's what I do.
And what do you have in the back?
What's that?
What do you have in the back of your pickup truck? What do you carry around?
That probably traffic cones.
There, I can't do it. It's a little gecko on the wall, I think, is what that is.
That's a big gecko on your wall.
Oh, big gecko, yeah. There's more light you would see. It's really colorful, too.
Also, Lisa, what were you saying that he has in the back?
Oh, I said he probably has traffic cones in the back, so he can just direct traffic around where he needs to be. Yeah.
Someone is also asking in the chat, I think related to Lisa's question too, why is traffic in the other lane always faster? Because it does seem like there's always a fast lane.
That is a good question. Actually, it always seems that way because what's actually happening is they're moving relatively evenly, almost at all times. Where you can run into problems, though, is where you have people coming on let's say, onto a freeway or off of a freeway. So people are always moving into your lane if you're in the middle. So that can be a problem. But if you just stay, and there's really literally been studies on this, if you just stay in your lane as opposed to hopping lanes, you will actually move faster than if you're moving back and forth. But more important than moving faster is you'll maintain your sanity a little bit better.
This sounds like, Brian, before, when we did a pre-interview, you also told me, you said that there's a kind of a famous saying that traffic engineers say, which is that traffic engineers don't solve problems. What is it that they do?
Yeah, what happens is like most anything in engineering, what happens, there's always pros and cons, or there's gives and takes to anything that we do. And in traffic engineering in particular, it's hard to really solve problems or to solve them on a permanent basis. For example, if you improve traffic flow by retiming a traffic signal, that frustrates everybody. Why can't they time traffic signals? Well, what happens is if you fix that, if you get traffic moving, people are smart enough that they're going to start taking that route again. So if people see traffic moving, let's say on a freeway or through a corridor, and they can reduce their travel time, they're going to hop back on that route. So what happens is that you fix the problem only temporarily, or what you do if it gets worse, people just shift their routes or their travel to other routes. So it's this whack-a-mole, so to speak. But when you look at the big picture, we are making improvements, but it's hard for people to see that sometimes.
Okay, so we're gonna get into some of our games. I do just want to highlight one thing, which is there's so many great questions coming in from the audience, and I'm gonna try and get to as many as I can. I also want to highlight that a beautiful part of this show is, right, we have comedy, we have academia, we have those worlds colliding, and you can see it really clearly in the kinds of questions that are coming in. Let me just read you two questions that came in back to back. You don't have to answer both of these, but one of them is, in Mission Impossible 3, Ethan Hunt's cover is being a traffic engineer, and he is made fun of for being in a boring job. Do you feel insulted by that? So that's clearly a comedy fan. That's a hilarious question. And then right back to back with that, we got, does the diffusion equation in reverse time describe why unexpectedly braking in traffic causes a dead stop a long distance behind for no reason?
Chris, if you get it, that one's funny too, though.
Okay, great.
You see what he's referencing there? That's a good joke.
That is true. That is true, Josh. You got me. Okay. Well, let's get into one of our games. And Brian, you can also come back to those questions later on if you want. But
sure. Our show is called Wrong Answers Only. And in this first game, I'm going to give our panelists a phrase or an acronym that shows up in one of Brian's papers. And any of our panelists, there's no order, anyone can answer. Call out some wrong answers for what you think that might mean. This game is called Jargonauts. Okay, so, and we're going to give out points for every answer that we enjoy. Remember, it doesn't have to be correct. So one of Brian's papers was called Identifying High-Risk Roadways Through Jerk Cluster Analysis. So panelists, what is jerk cluster analysis? Or also, we will also accept answers for what a high-risk roadway is. So trying to explain to us what either of those things are.
Jerk cluster analysis is precisely what I was talking about a minute ago. And that's everyone around me when I'm driving. That's all of them. That's people who block intersections, people who can't handle waiting for me to parallel park, etc. That's jerk cluster analysis.
That feels like, Brian, that actually could be correct. Is that correct?
It's pretty damn close, Lisa.
Really?
You missed your calling. You should be a traffic engineer.
Well, okay, so tell us, that's what it means? What is jerk cluster?
No, that is not what it means.
Okay, so when you said pretty close, you meant not close.
Yeah. He was lying.
Since this is a National Academy of Sciences show, a jerk is actually the third derivative of position with respect to time. So if you think about it, what you do is you change position over time, and how fast you do that is your speed. How fast you change your speed over time is called acceleration. How fast you change your acceleration over time is actually called the jerk. So what we do is we're looking for forceful decelerations, and what that suggests is abnormal braking. And where you get abnormal maneuvering, steering, braking, any kind of abnormal maneuver, you tend to get, with those cluster, you tend to get a lot of crashes. So that's what that paper was about.
Someone is also suggesting in the chat that a jerk cluster could be a street with a number of chicken joints on it. And I love that. That also is great.
Oh, I was going to say a jerk cluster is, when you're at a bar and there's like a bunch of really tall men next to the bar and you can't get to the bartender? That's what it is. That's a fact.
Yeah, that's a high-risk roadway right there for sure, too.
Yeah.
Okay, another one of Brian's papers was called Operational Practices for Reversible Roadways. What is a reversible roadway? And remember, wrong answers only.
I would say it's like a slip and slide situation. So, when it's like raining really badly and so the car could go in any direction, that's what's happening.
Yeah, like a really terrifying slip and slide.
Yeah,
it's fun,
you could die, but also you could not.
Yeah, okay, that's fun.
Yeah.
Brian?
Oh, okay. What a reversible roadway is, it's a roadway like any other roadway, but what you're allowed to do is you can reverse the direction of the flow. So if you think about a roadway that might be 4 lanes inbound, 4 lanes, you're going to have 2 lanes in each direction. But if you need extra capacity to move more traffic in the morning, you might turn one, maybe even both of those lanes. You reverse the flow. So what you can do is double the capacity, double the amount of vehicles that you can move into the city during the morning, just temporarily. Then you change it back to normal operation. Then in the afternoon, you do the exact opposite. You reverse the inbound flow into the outbound direction, and you can get everybody home sooner. That's the idea. But it's not just for peak hours. What we really use it for highly effectively is for big evacuation events, like a hurricane evacuation. So what we can do is reverse actually the flow of hundreds of miles of freeway into an outbound direction, and we're able to evacuate hundreds of thousands of people much quicker than we would be able to do otherwise. And you don't have to buy, or you don't have to build any more roads or pay for anything, because the road's already there, and really nobody's coming into the city anyway during the middle of an emergency. So that's what reversible flow is.
It also sounds like Karen's idea of a slip and slide is potentially a form of reversible roadway.
Especially in a big storm, that thing's going to be slick. That's a great way to go.
It looks like I just took over your job, Brian.
You did. You guys are definitely experts. By the way, Josh, the last thing we don't want people to do is be slipping and sliding during an evacuation. What we usually do is evacuate before the storm gets there.
Sure,
so hopefully they're not slipping and sliding around too much, but it doesn't always happen that way.
Okay, well, the last term, I feel like that's already a pro move that you were suggesting there. The last term that we're going to do in this game is Brian served on the editorial board of the Journal of Advanced Transportation. So panelists, I would love if each of you could toss me out an example of what advanced transportation might be. What is an article or information you might find in that?
I would think like maybe that's when your car careens off of something, and so it takes flight in a way. So that is an advancement in that technology, because the car is doing more than it was designed to do.
Yeah, you get like a Dukes of Hazzard type situation.
Yeah, my car actually has that feature. It's pretty nice.
Okay, is that also an American-made pickup?
Yes, it is.
No, it's a Volkswagen. So I'm going to use that feature to drive it right off the Santa Monica Pier very soon.
Okay. Karen?
Mine would be, okay, have you guys ever been on those duck boat tours? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where your boat kind of looks like it's like a car, but it also becomes a boat and it looks like a duck. That's what it is, but everybody in America will have one by the end of 2024, and that's what I'm campaigning on.
Yeah, this is also a subtle way for Karen to be like, by the way, I went to school outside Boston. You know, duck boats.
Wait, aren't they all over the East Coast? Duck boats everywhere?
I think it's very Boston, Karen.
Very Boston to me.
Wait,
Boston biases.
Is it like a paddle boat shaped like a duck, or is this a different
It's like a
thing?
huge... It's like a big tour bus, kind of, but
yeah, it's an amphibious bus. Yeah, Boston and Austin. They have them a lot in Austin, Texas.
An amphibious bus?
Yeah, they just drive it straight into the river, basically.
Amphibious tourist bus. They drive around the city of Austin, Texas, and they call them duck boats, and they'll give people these little quack, quack, quackers, and you'll hear them quack, 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 quack as they.
Oh no!
No kidding.
Karen, the true sadness in your face as you say, I never got a quacker is really incredible.
I would have loved one. There's also duck boats in Chicago, so I'm really speaking for all of America.
Yep.
They have little propellers on the back. They're awesome. They're really cool.
And Josh, do you have an advanced transportation for us?
Well, you know me, I'm a New Yorker. My only car is my legs. So I feel like any of you driving, it feels very advanced to me. I'm used to the subway. I'm chauffeured, you know, darling? That you guys drive yourself. I'm like, wow, seems like a lot.
That's true. That's
read books, you know?
The most advanced transportation is someone else does your transporting for you. That's truly advanced.
It is.
Okay, also, I don't want you to guess on this one, but I do just want to show you one last project that Brian was involved with because it makes me laugh. You know, I feel like sometimes when I talk to scientists, they stretch a little bit to get an acronym to make it work, to like spell something out. But I have never seen a group of scientists stretch this far to try and force an acronym. Here is a group that Brian worked with at the Department of Transportation. Let's bring up that slide. Yeah, it's the Rescue Me, and that stands for Response, Emergency Staging, and Communications Uniform Management and Evacuation. That is...
And it really is Rescume, if we're being honest.
Rescume.
Definitely
Rescume. Yep. Okay. Let's next go into another game. This is called Car Me by Your Name. Okay, so panelists, Brian is not just a traffic engineer. He's also a human with a family. And in doing research for this show, we talked to his brother, Jeff, about what it is like to have a traffic engineer for a brother. And we found out some very interesting information from Jeff. For example, here is a video of how Jeff answered when I asked him, well, what kind of car would Brian be if he was a car? What kind of vehicle would he be?
If Brian was a motor vehicle, I guess he'd probably be like a tractor trailer because he's a fairly big dude. And I think his nickname, when he rode his bike, he did some bike racing. And I think his nickname was either the Big Rig or the Big Tractor or something like that. So yeah, definitely the Mack truck or something.
Okay, just incredible already. First of all, so many gems in there. You did bike racing and they called you the Big Rig. That's the most badass scientist fact I've heard ever.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Bike racing is a lot like football. You have like a running back and a quarterback, and there's only one guy who scores the touchdown. But I would be like the pulling guard, so to speak, on the bike racing team. So you're there to kind of clear the way through the pack and to make sure that guy's safe and he's riding behind you. So you can do that when you're about 6'5", 250 pounds.
I feel like you've literally left the panel speaceless.
Sorry.
Was like, what?
I know. We're not frozen. We're like, what?
I want to say, it seemed like Jeff was unclear on exactly what your nickname was, but to me, the Big Rig is a much better nickname than that is Brian. He's the Big Truck.
Yeah, I'm surprised my brother was that nice to me. Usually he's not that nice.
Yeah, well, I will say he also told us that despite you being a traffic engineer, he thinks that he is a much safer driver than you, and he is not 100% comfortable being in a car with you.
He's a maniac. He is the maniac.
That is what he said about you. Actually, word for word, he said that about you.
No.
Wait, I should also point out, Brian, your brother looks like a movie star. Was I the only person who got that about?
No, Karen, I had the same thought.
Yeah.
He's been working on that mullet all through the pandemic. He is so proud. He just got a haircut too, Karen. Oh, there you go, Josh.
Yeah, that's a handsome man right there, roasting you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have. I want to ask you a few questions from the audience because we're getting some really great questions. Here's one. Okay, can you share examples of a most excellent traffic engineered scenario, and likewise, like the worst or someplace to avoid?
Ooh, yes. Well, I can think of lots of really good ones. So a good one I think would be here's a really good one. This was done actually by a former student of mine. We had a really congested stretch of road, maybe a half a mile. And it was really congested, obviously, because there was a lot of cars, but there was a lot of places to go. There was shopping and restaurants and those other things. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to bring in a super Walmart right into the middle of this. And by doing a couple of very, very simple, inexpensive things, she was actually able to get rid of all the traffic congestion with a super Walmart. That was the most impressive thing I've ever seen in my career. So, and what she did is if you add an extra left turn lane, what you can do is you have twice as many people who are turning left. So if you have a traffic signal, you can take all that time that you would spend waiting for the left turn movements, and you can put that through the through movements. So she was better able to allocate time just by building 1 or 2 extra lanes along that stretch. That's impressive.
And what about, like, is there a place in the world or like in the country where you're like, that is the single worst intersection that I've ever been to, or something like that?
Oh God, I would rather not say.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because what happens, I think a lot of times is we know that things are not perfect as engineers. We know that there's ways to fix them, but a lot of times they're difficult to fix. Sometimes it's not a matter of money. Sometimes it's not a matter of awareness or technology. Sometimes what we have to look at is the disruption, let's say, to people's property outside of the road. Sometimes we look at environmentally sensitive areas. Well, we know we can build a road, but we just don't do it anyway. So, people know bad traffic when they see it. But what's interesting is that bad traffic is fixable, but it's not always practical to fix it. That's the problem, I think, that we run into.
Okay, we got another question here, which is an audience member says, why do we have rosaries in busy cities? They're okay in sparsely traveled rural areas, but in cities, they're a nightmare. And then they clarified afterwards, one needs a rosary when driving through a rotary. It must have been a typo, I think, the first time. But is that true? Are rotaries not good in big cities? They're only good in rural areas? Or is that?
Another excellent question. So what a rotary intersection is, like a big traffic circle, there's a sweet spot for it. It's not effective, or it's not as efficient with a ton of traffic, and it's not as effective with really light traffic. Rotary intersections or traffic circles need about medium levels of traffic. And what happens is fundamentally what they do is they keep traffic moving at all times. In theory, no one has to stop. You're just merging in and out of the traffic that's driving around the circle. The problem is if you get too much traffic, like any place else, it clogs it up. So what do? You put in a traffic signal, and then that stops traffic. So it's that balance between keeping traffic moving and making sure that we're separating conflict so we keep it safe.
Okay, I want to get to our next segment, but I'm going to put a pin in this question because I do want to come back to it. Someone is asking about how do you balance not just cars, but pedestrian and cyclist safety too, which is all the forms of transport. Ooh. And especially as we want to push people to be using those other forms of transport more too. But okay, maybe this will actually come up in our next segment, which is called Help Me, I'm Stuck. So in this segment, our panelists are going to have Brian play the role of an advice columnist. So Brian, they're each going to ask you a traffic or transportation conundrum that they've been stuck in or that they've experienced or seen, and then you're going to answer it Dear Abby style. So give them a little like, well, here's one potential way we'd solve that, or here's, that's a hard one. You don't always have to come up with an answer. But Karen, let's start with you. And please remember to start your traffic conundrum with Dear Brian.
Okay. Dear Brian, this is something that happened to me about 2 years ago. So I was in a Lyft and we were driving just down like a regular pedestrian, sort of like a neighborhood street. And so there weren't any like lines on the ground that designate roadways, you know what I mean? It's just like a little road. Okay, and then this other car came up and then gently bumped my Lyft. And so then this was in New York, so my Lyft driver immediately got out and started yelling at the other driver. And then that driver got out and started yelling, and it became immediately clear that that car was also a Lyft. And so then I made eye contact with the person sitting in the back of the other car. So anyway, we were in like a signless sort of neighborhood area. So I guess my question is, why did that passenger and I fall in love? Sincerely, Loveless in a Lyft.
Loveless in a Lyft. So I could think of that experience like when you're riding a boat. You ever notice that? I mean, people don't wave to each other when they're riding in cars, but for some reason, when people are in boats and they're passing by, they just feel compelled to wave to each other.
That's so
I think
true.
what I think it was a shared experience. So you connected on that shared experience. That's what I think it was.
Okay,
And nothing
that
to do with
wasn't enough
traffic
for me.
engineering.
I did not expect you to have such a deep insight about the human soul, Brian, but you truly are more than a traffic expert.
And when you're stuck in traffic, it's a lot of time to muse.
Yes.
You can think, you can get existential. I understand philosophically where Brian's coming from. It's a lot of time in stillness with your own thoughts.
And Karen,
That's bike
congratulations.
racing right there. A lot of time to think. Not always healthy.
Lisa, please ask our advice columnist, Dear Brian, one of your questions.
Dear Brian, I find myself in traffic a lot where a lot of times people in LA do this thing where they know they don't have time to make it through the intersection. So they just drive into it and essentially park in the intersection so that cross traffic can't go through. And I don't like the sound of a lot of horns, so I don't like to use my horn a lot because it just adds to the aggravation. But I do carry snacks in my car, so I oftentimes will like throw an almond at another driver or like a plantain chip. And I would like to know, do you think those people, am I teaching them a lesson by doing that?
Well, you got to be careful if you're horny and stuck in traffic, I guess. What I think.
Put that on a t-shirt. Brian, put that on a t-shirt. You're going to make $1 million.
You can edit that one out, Kate, I guess.
Oh, no, that's going to fund the National Academy for years.
It's going on a break.
It was Dear Abby, so I'm giving advice. So what I would say, Lisa, is that fundamentally, driving is one of the most selfish things we can do as human beings. We're all looking out for our own benefit. And a lot of times we just don't care as drivers that we're blocking somebody. We got to get to where we got to go. To heck with all the other people who are trying to get to where they got to go. So I say keep throwing your almonds. We'll see if it works.
Okay. Well, thank you
and
for
blowing
that.
your horn.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Brian, I truly believe that this was a thing that I thought would potentially work as a joke. And I actually think that you have a career as an advice columnist, as a traffic-based advice columnist. Josh, go for it.
Yes. Okay. Dear Brian, we all know that rush hour is a terrible time for traffic because everyone is going to or from jobs. It seems to me there is one easy solution to this, and it's making work illegal. My question is, am I a genius? And have I solved everything?
Absolutely. What's funny about that is really we're going through that right now, Josh, with this post-pandemic. A lot of people are looking at this and they're saying, wow, we might not have people going to work anymore. And then other people are saying, well, if we don't have people going to work, well, then we don't need to build more roads. And if we don't need to build more roads, we can take that money and spend it elsewhere. So I think that remains to be seen, but I think it'll come back. I think we want to move around. We want to get out of the house, and there's always going to be someplace to go. So enjoy it while you can, Josh.
Well, thank you to Dear Brian. Incredible advice column. Let's get a few more of our audience questions here. So, Brian, I know you are a passionate biker. You're big rig. You're the big truck, Brian Wolshon. Let's talk some biking things. People are asking, how do you balance the pedestrian and biker safety? Also, someone is asking, why don't we just make bike lanes on the sidewalk so that they're less likely to get hit in the street? I imagine there's reasons for that, but talk to us about bike lanes.
Yeah, two great questions. So I like the phrase that they use, balancing. What we're trying to do is we don't want to balance it. We want to maximize both. We want to make biking safe. We want to make vehicles safe. We want to make it efficient. We want to keep people moving. The problem is obviously we have a little bit of a mass conflict, meaning you got big, heavy cars. I think what it is, it's a matter of awareness and education. Drivers in particular, being aware that cyclists are out there. And we can do a lot with engineering principles. We can do things with design to separate or move cyclists away from dangerous situations where they're in conflict, where they cross paths or they have to intersect movements, let's say at intersections or in turn lanes. what we try to do is mark those really well and to give advance warning and advance notice. But I think ultimately it comes down to drivers being aware and good. In terms of
good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. It seems like that's the hardest possible one to try and make it so that people change
but
how they think.
you know, Chris, that's what makes this job of this area of engineering so fun, because we can do the best we can, but no matter what, we're depending on people to actually use things correctly and make good decisions. And by and large, they do. But as engineers, we can't ever stop somebody. I mean, people can go through a red light if they want to, but what we're doing, we use education and enforcement and engineering together, and we're trying to communicate our intent of what's safe and what's not. Just really quick on the bicycles on sidewalks, there you have a bit of the opposite problem. So we think of sidewalks as for use by people walking or rollerblading or whatever. If you have people moving quickly on bicycles, what happens is that puts them in conflict. There can be safety conflicts. And you could also have a situation where you actually move them too far away from the road. So what you're doing is you're putting them in places where drivers might not necessarily see them. So when they do cross, it might be unexpected to the driver. So it's nice to keep everybody separate if we can, but it's hard to do practically.
I have a question, if I can, Chris.
Please, Josh, go.
I started biking in New York in the last year, and I wonder, Brian, what do you make of like cities like Copenhagen that really feel like they've inverted the priorities and been like, what if biking was like the number one priority and not cars?
Yeah, you know what's amazing.
I think your traffic picture at large, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think that's a cultural thing where culturally, and not just culturally, land development in the United States has grown and has developed. So we put things a lot of times, certainly in suburban areas, far away. And so people don't necessarily want to walk or bike. I think in a city like Copenhagen, or New York, where it's much more dense development, that's more achievable. The other thing about Copenhagen in particular that is really impressive, University of California, Santa Barbara is like this, where bicycles on campus, like Copenhagen, actually have the main right-of-way. The traffic signals are set up for cyclists. But I think that's cultural. I think that's something that's been longstanding, and they're used to it. And where people live, where people shop, and how they live is facilitates that. It's hard to go to Costco and load up on a big screen TV and 4 months of toilet paper and then try to ride your bike back home.
I will say I did feel like. Oh, please, Lisa, go.
I was going to say, to call it back to Josh's idea earlier, if we stop working, we can't afford these things at Costco. We can instead bike. So I think that's a lot of problems solved.
Sort of everything radiates out of that let's get rid of work solution.
I think we might have just used traffic to end capitalism. I'm not positive, but it seems like it might have happened.
Podcast is socialist, right, Chris? Did I sign up for the right post?
Josh, you're here. Yeah, this is sponsored by the DSA and the National Academy of Sciences. Okay, so we're going to move along. I do also want to say one interesting thing that I've learned about Copenhagen, this is not a joke at all, is when they teach people driver's ed there, they teach them to open the driver's side door with your other hand. So you have to turn to see if there's a bike behind you.
Wow.
I think
that is good.
Okay. Okay. So panelists, this is our last game of the show. So it's still anyone's chance to win. And we're calling this game, Give Me a Sign. So we're going to show you a road sign from the United Kingdom, not a US road sign, a UK road sign, and you have to tell us what it means. And remember, the show is called Wrong Answers Only. Also, someone has said in the chat, this is not a question, but I just want to say this to you, Brian, because it's a compliment. Someone said, traffic engineer does not quite capture your role, Brian. Somehow you have a lot of social psychology coupled with abnormal psychology. So I don't know if they were saying you personally have an abnormal psychology or you've studied it, but I want you to know.
They're probably a friend of mine.
It seems like it might be.
No, Brian, it sounds like someone's really hitting on you in the comment section.
Totally.
Oh,
and they might not even be trying to get to your brother. It might just be straight for you.
Yeah. Just to be clear, I'm trying to get to your brother. So
Absolutely. There's a lot of people trying to get to Jeff.
Karen, I'm giving him your number.
Okay, here's our first image. Here's our first sign from the United Kingdom. All right, what does that traffic sign mean? What is this traffic sign for? Panelists?
I think that's like a warning. There's a car bomb warning. So there must be Irish people ahead.
Oh, no. Oh, God. Oh, no. Okay.
Listen, I'm Irish.
You can say it.
I get it.
You can say it. Chris Duffy. I also got some permission on this one.
And that is something I think the British would do.
That does feel like a British sign. Okay. I am with you. Karen, Josh, any ideas for that one?
I think it's like a clown car situation, and they're letting you know there are a lot of cars in the car a lot of clowns in the car up ahead, and it looks like they're cooking something. They're having a great time in there. So if you want to join, it's like a welcome sign.
Yeah, we kind of cut the text off, but it says, warning, hijinks may ensue.
But can you put it back up again, Chris? Is that a thing?
Yeah, let's put that back up one more time. Josh, you need to see it again?
Yeah. I think it's if you're gonna have an explosion on top of your car, you got to do it in a snow globe.
Great point. Very important. Okay, that one is actually no vehicles carrying explosives, which I think we got very close to. I would also ban clowns from that, and certainly car bombs are counted by it. So we'll say that everyone got that one right. Next one. Let's look at the next one. Anyone throw out what you think this might be?
Yeah, that's wheels that make popcorn definitely allowed.
Yes. That would be my guess too, Josh.
It's saying like, Pop Rocks, the snack, it's saying you can feed it to your car, but this is a nice area to feed your car Pop Rocks. Definitely
could be either of those.
See, I saw that as like good place to spin out and do a little Dukes of Hazzard action.
Oh yeah, this is a sick car trick zone.
Yeah, if you want to do some donuts or wheelies, this is the place to do it right here.
I love that. I believe this one is actually saying surface dressing, which means that there's like loose rocks at the top. But I think that Lisa, you were the closest on that one. I think that also means it's a great place to spin out. Okay, last one. This is not from the UK. This is from the US. Here's a sign that someone took a photo of, and we have for you.
I think it's saying this is where they shot Bonnie and Clyde. Thelma and Louise.
Yep, Thelma and Louise.
There it is. We got there.
Yeah. I thought that is actually a weird angle, but that is the end of the Santa Monica Pier and Lisa's car flying off of it.
It absolutely is.
I think it's a sign that shows that the person who was painting the sign got fired partway through their job. So they started, and then it was like, ran out of money, goodbye, there's a pandemic, and so they went home.
That's the sign that says, we did it, we ended work. Josh, Lisa, Karen, you solved it. Yes. Work ended in the middle of this sign. Well, how could we possibly end on a better note than that for the show? That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Brian. We're coming right to the end of our show. So let's check in on our score. Let's see. It looks like Lisa has the most points and Karen has the least. So, Karen, you won by having the most wrong answers, or if you want to look at it the other way, Lisa, you lost by winning. The only clear loser is Josh. Next time, do better or worse. All right. Before we go, Brian, will you tell us what is the biggest thing that you hope everyone who is watching takes away about traffic and traffic engineering as a field?
Number one, that it's actually a real science. And that there's people who are working on this stuff every day, whether they're in research and education like me, or in practice or in planning. There are really people who are out there trying to solve these problems. I promise you, we really are.
And Brian, I just want to say that I love that the way that you have explained also that it's this balance, right, between impact on the environment, impact on people, transportation and economics, and frustration. I think it's really interesting to think about all the things that you have to balance in something like that. So thank you for letting me see traffic in a new way. I also live in Los Angeles, and I will still be furious. And as Lisa is pelting my car with almonds, I'll still be upset, but at least I will understand more of the dynamics that go into it.
Awesome.
So panelists, that's what Brian hopes that you take away from today's show. What will you actually take away from today's show? Lisa, what will you take away?
I mean, clearly that I'm a great driver and I'm single-handedly solving all the issues of the road, but I just can't get people to participate with me. So
that's great. I will also take that away. I applaud you and I salute your efforts. Karen, what will you take away?
Kind of like what Brian just said, that there's a lot more information than we see. And so it's up to us to get more information. And the information I would really like is Brian's brother's phone number. So that's
I can make that happen.
You know, the plot twist of all of this is that it was actually Jeff Wolshon in the back of that lift when they tapped the car. And Josh, what are you going to take away from today's show?
Well, you know, I think a lot of people really hate traffic. It's one of the biggest nuisances in their lives. But we really did learn from Comrade Brian that if we, the proletariat, band together as working people to overthrow the bourgeoisie class, it's empty roadways and green lights forever.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you all so much for being here. Brian, I would love to hear the results of everyone in Louisiana hearing that statement from Josh being endorsed by you. Have a solidarity. Okay, so thank you so much for playing. Thank you to Brian for being here. If you are in the audience, that is our show for tonight. You are going to get an email after this show with bonus information from our expert and with links to get deeper into Brian's research, as well as some great jokes and comedy videos from our panelists. And of course, there's that trivia contest, which could get your name on our scroll of glory. We would also love to get any feedback from you about the show. We're always looking to improve things. And that is our show for tonight. We will be back next month on December 16th for our final show of the year. The registration link is up and you can register for that right now at this link right here, labx.org, or it's going to be in the chat. In the meantime, though, thank you so much to tonight's expert, Dr. Brian Wolshon. Thank you to our panelists, Karen Chi, Josh Sharp, and Lisa Curry. Thanks as well to everyone at the National Academy of Sciences and LabX for making everything possible. Thank you to the back end folks, Jesse, Dempsey, Amechi, Mario, Jose, everyone on the tech team. I am your host, Chris Duffy, and this has been Wrong Answers Only. Find out more about this show and future episodes online at labx.org/WAO. Thank you so much. Drive safe, bike safe, be safe.